Olympic level figure skating is hard, but acting is harder. We watched Sharp Edges and Breakaway, both starring Portland's own Tonya Harding, so that means it's time for another Portland at the Movies.
In a world, in a time, in a land of eternal beauty, all that stands between a city and a disaster. In a city where anything can happen. If you thought you had seen it all.
You'd be surprised how tough I really am.
Hello and welcome to another Portland at the Movies. I am Todd Werkhoven, and joining me, as always, is Mark Middleton. How are you, Mark?
I'm really well, Todd. How are you?
I am doing okay. Next to me is Brian, the Unipiper kid. How are you, Brian?
Hey, Todd. I am doing really well, and I'm really excited to be here today.
Yes, because we have a special guest today. It is John-Ryan Griggs, who is a producer at A Touch Too Much Productions, who this last week brought us the Tonya Harding Film Festival. Welcome, John-Ryan.
Thank you for having me.
So you reached out to us and asked if we would come to the Tonya Harding Film Festival, and I think our first thought was, well, of course there's a Tonya Harding Film Festival in Portland. So tell us how this all came to be.
Well, I've always been attracted to the Tonya Harding situation. And of course, this year it's like extra juicy because of Tonya. So I was watching this special on ABC called Truth and Lies, and they did this kind of like interview with everybody who's ever spoken about her, and they had clips of this little. It was a short little clips from a movie called Sharp Edges, and so I was like, wow, I really need to see this thing. And so I spent, a couple hours online trying to track it down, and I couldn't. And so I reached out to the woman who made it, Sandra Luco, and I was like, I need to see this thing, and let's talk. So she was game for letting us do a screening, and that's how it happened.
That's how it happened. So, and we also, so there was the movie that you mentioned, which is, how long is the documentary movie?
The documentary is 49 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, it was a little longer than I guess I didn't have any expectations coming up, but then as we learned, it was what was the director's name again?
Sandra Luco.
Okay. So yeah, it was her. She did this documentary as a project for her senior thesis at Yale. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And she convinced her professors. She told a great story. She was there and introduced the film, and she told a story about how she convinced her professors that she wanted to do this documentary and had to go back and forth because she didn't want to write a thesis but make this movie. And she had skated with Tonya. Is that how she knew?
Yeah. So they both took training from Diane Rawlinson, who is like the big name responsible for Tonya Harding's skating. And
she was the one with the short bob haircut.
Yeah,
okay,
like the
which she had to put in curler and blow out every day, as we saw in the movie.
Yeah. Meanwhile, everyone else is sleeping. Yeah, so she was kind of the she was the coach, and so Sandra knew her and knew Tonya because of that, and so she was like, I want to do this project about Tonya, and they were like, okay. With the contingency that Sandra would film a sizzle reel for her, so that they could market her to potential investors.
Okay, and so in this documentary, which was just called Sharp Edges, Tonya is 15 years old and she's practicing for her first nationals, or was that not her first nationals?
It's her first.
It was her first big something.
Came across as her first in the film.
Yeah.
So you just see these clips and you just reach out to the director, and then all of a sudden you're showing this at a Tonya Harding Film Festival. How do we get from?
I guess I did forget to connect a few.
How do we get
there
from you having a passing interest in seeking out this film to suddenly now we have a Tonya Harding Film Festival in Portland? What was that conversation like?
It would be greedy for me to get the film and like keep it to myself, right? So I thought, well, if I want to see it, surely there's other weirdos that want to see it too. And so when I reached out to her, I was like, let's do a screening. And
now she's from Portland originally?
Yeah, she's from Portland, but she's in New York now teaching at Yale. Right. Which I didn't think to do a bunch of research before I reached out to her. I was just like, let's really do it. And so maybe I oversold myself a little bit, but she was like, okay. And, we had some initial conversations about like what I could and couldn't do. And then, we got on the phone. I called her to make sure that like I was kind of on a similar wavelength as far as Tonya Harding goes with her. And then we just did it. And Breakaway for me was kind of the chaser, because Sharp Edges doesn't leave you feeling like awesome. You know what I mean?
So did you know, like, once you had the idea of showing the screening, you knew of Breakaway and you knew that it had to be in there?
Yeah. I mean, I think if we had just done Sharp Edges as an event, it would have been, I don't know.
There would have been a different vibe.
Yeah.
And it's a little short for like one event.
Yeah. Yep.
So I thought it was a really cool juxtaposition, those two films together, because what it did, it was like the beginning of the story, the prequel, if you will.
Yeah.
And then it was like the follow-up. It's like we know what happens. Everyone knows the middle of the story. Yeah. And this is like seeing this journey from potential to what it ended up,
Aftermath.
Aftermath. And it was really cool to kind of see that transition.
Yeah.
So it was neat.
It really was it is a little bit like the Phantom Menace. I mean, Tonya is, and
it was better than the Phantom Menace.
It was much better than the Phantom Menace.
I was more excited about Breakaway going into this.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any expectations for Sharp Edges, but like the questions and the answers that you get in the story that Sharp Edges tells, it was a lot of. And we should
Are we back?
Be back.
Nice. Sorry about that.
We were talking.
Yeah, well, I was gonna. So Tonya, like I mentioned, was 15, which brings a really interesting aspect because she still is very much a child and not an adult, and you see what her life is like a little bit. Her mother is interviewed, but before we kind of get into that, I want to ask you, why Tonya Harding Film? And what is, and I have my own answer, but what intrigues you about the story of Tonya Harding so much that you would go through this?
Well, I mean, I grew up watching it. I'm not from Portland, but I can pretend to be.
Uh-huh.
So, every time I walk through the Lloyd Center with a new person, I'm like, Tonya Harding got her something. And they like roll their eyes and don't care.
Yeah.
But I think to some extent, like Portland, every city clings to their celebrity, and we've got Tonya. So like, let's work with that. And just kind of wanting to see the movie and knowing that there would be kind of this weird audience for it, it seemed right. Like people have kind of moved past hating her and they're back on to loving her again.
Yeah, so with a bit of irony perhaps, but
for sure.
It's like embracing Vanilla Ice again.
Yeah, it's an understanding, a coming to terms. We have her, she is ours, and we better learn to accept it.
Yeah, well, and I think the whole macro story and why I find it so interesting, and I think you mentioned this when you introduced the film, Tonya is all of us. Like, she is a hero, and she's the villain of her own story, and she's someone that one second you're really rooting for and really proud of, and then the next moment you're like,
yeah,
again, what are you doing again? And like, I identify as like, I'm not good or bad. I'm both sometimes, and all of us are both. And
there was a really interesting period that Tonya had in like the celebrity death. Like there was a boxing tournament that she was
Yeah.
in,
Oh, yeah.
and she was
The
on
any-
the 80s or the 90s show.
The anything for attention phase.
The anything for attention phase, and we all seem to kind of really hate her at that point. And
Yeah.
there is this resurgence that clearly Tonya has a lot to do with it in terms of bringing the nostalgia back up. But it is an interesting journey to watch. As now we're like, yeah, we know her. Even with current political issues and things, we go, yeah, he's a liar, and we voted for him, and he's there, and he's kind of a known villain.
Mm-hmm.
We're okay with that in a strange way nowadays, and so Tonya is
She's
that
a
personification.
complicated figure.
Absolutely,
And,
complicated.
who remembers Nancy Kerrigan really today?
Yep.
Everyone remembers Tonya Harding,
Yep.
and there's much more of an interesting story behind her.
And there is no Nancy Kerrigan reference without Tonya
No.
Harding.
Yeah, and a good guy on paper, like the Luke Skywalker character, is kind of boring. They have to go on an emotional journey and discovery, and that's what Tanya was.
Yep.
It never ends.
Yeah, and that's true. And there's no resolution to that story, which is interesting
No,
too.
there really isn't. And to talk directly to that, once I got this thing organized, I was like, okay, next step is getting Tanya. So I thought it would be like a real treat for everybody to get her to show, right?
Sure. Right.
Because I mean, I've read other things where she makes appearances at
Sure.
things when people like talk about her or
Yeah.
whatever. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just get lucky. And I thought that would take the whole thing, playing God here. It would take everything full circle. Everybody in Portland would be happy, and we would all go home, But she was a no-show.
But she was a no-show.
Did you have contact with her or her people?
Yeah. Not her directly. I started initially. I sent her like a really lovely note because I figured, first of all, it's polite to let them know that you're doing this.
Yeah.
And that did not work. And then I reached out to her press agent, who she fired, or I think he fired her actually, like right before.
Oh wow.
Because she was demanding.
Difficult.
Yeah, she was demanding like all this money if people brought up the attack on Nancy Kerrigan.
Oh, I see.
And he's like, yeah, no. So that didn't work. But he gave me the contact information for her. I forget the title, but it's essentially like her godmother who handles her press. And so I reached out to her a couple different ways. She was not responsive.
She was not responsive. She did
Well,
not respond to comment.
We do know where she lives. Like,
Yeah.
Wait, that is not a threat, by the way.
no. Like, we could just
Yeah.
send her a little note.
Yeah, I mean, how far do you take it?
Yeah.
Ultimately, it was, I want her to know that it's happening. In a perfect world, she'll show up. But in a lot of ways, her not showing up made it a lot easier to do.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
there was an honesty in Sandra in her Q&A and in the perspective she brought to the film that I don't know she would have been able to bring that had Tanya been there.
That's a good point too, because right off the bat, I talked to Sandra and I was like, okay, like, what is your take on Tonya Harding? Because people are going to show up and they're going to love her and they're going to hate her and they're going to laugh, and like, I don't want you being tricked into something.
You could tell from the audience that there were people like on both sides
Yeah,
in
yeah.
attendance.
Most surprisingly, there was like a lot of love for her, like unconditional, which totally took me by surprise. But Sandra's done a very good job of speaking her mind throughout the whole thing. She's been on like countless TV specials and stuff.
She's
about
kind of a big deal. Like, I didn't know who she would, like, because
Yeah.
you think like, oh, this was shot on VHS, and like she could be just like some mom somewhere now that's
Right,
just like so
right.
random, but she's like rattling off her Ivy League professorial.
Was there a moment in this where you kind of were like intimidated once you found out like who she is now and that you're working with her to put this together?
Actually, no, which is totally surprising, and it's just because I didn't do enough homework leading it. I think that if I knew exactly what was up when I reached out to her, I wouldn't have reached out to her. But yeah, like she was super.
She was really cool and like down to earth. She
Yeah,
was really
totally.
great. She stayed all the way through Breakaway.
Oh yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, I think her and I shut the place down at the end,
Nice.
and yeah, she was so easy to be around and talk to.
And she was a couple years older than Tonya. So Tonya was 15 when she made this, and Sonya made it with a shoulder mount VHS straight to camcorder with the onboard mic, all of that stuff. It looked great for what she had to work with, the actual documentary. But because she knew Tonya and Tanya's mom and the coaches and some of the players, they were astonishingly candid with her. Even Tonya talking about her mom and her mom in this documentary. If anyone has seen the documentary Grey Gardens, like she was Grey Gardens, like just she was wearing a fur shawl.
It was a fake fur coat.
Okay,
my first thought watching it, as soon as it came on, the tone and the characters and with the way they were talking, it felt like a Christopher Guest movie.
It really did,
with real people.
Yeah, and not only does she have this crazy fake fur on when she's sitting in her kitchen, there's a bird just sitting on her shoulder, and it is.
Which I guess we would have known had we seen I, Tonya.
Yeah, which I haven't seen that yet either, so I didn't know that actually shows up in I, Tonya, that actual costume there, which the director also noted that visually I, Tonya, a lot of it they based on the documentary that she did because that's of that time, and a lot of tragic hairstyles in the documentary. It was rough going for everyone, but it was interesting because you do really see Tonya as a person and a kid in this, where you are astonished kind of getting a peek into what her background is, what she is not only accomplishing at that age, but kind of goes on to accomplish, and just it really makes you root for her again. But then the next moment you're like, oh, like, and you just go back and forth. And I think that's what's intriguing about this, because it's not black and white. She's not. No. And I think that's why the story sticks around.
Yeah, and it's weird to see a documentary that's so old, and you know how it ends, and then you know what happens after, and then after. And so, if you watch this movie in, 1987 or whatever, you would think, oh, this girl is really going to, like, nail it. You know, she's going to overcome, and she doesn't.
Tragic fall.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then she does, and then she doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing. She is a triumphant skater, and she is someone that accomplished amazing. And I was thinking, we were talking a little bit before we started recording about how this is kind of like the Star Wars prequels, like watching Jake Lloyd knowing he will become Darth Vader, and he's still redeemed in the end, at the very end, but like just knowing the journey that this kid is going to go on makes it compelling too.
The brutal honesty was what got me. Like the coach is saying that she would be nothing, without the skating, and her mom saying how she sucks, and Tonya like looking at the camera calling her mom a bitch. Like, it was impactful.
There's a section in it when Vicky Mills, who is a local dance teacher, who was brought in to kind of coach Tonya out of her everything. And they do like a sit-down interview, and she's like, my goal for Tonya is to basically eradicate like all of her characteristics.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's kind of rude.
It was really interesting, so they bring in basically someone to revamp her look and her style and stuff like that, and they told Tonya, we need to make you marketable, we need to change everything about you, because Tonya is white trash and has that background. And there's a scene, it's like a sad Pretty Woman, where they take her to like a department store.
It's one of my favorite scenes.
And put a dress on Tonya, and I have like the acting, and she's not acting, but her reactions of putting on a dress, and she's not mugging for the camera, but she's just making those, I can't believe I'm having to wear this, and like working with the shoulder, like super uncomfortable with everything about it. And it's like, wow, I'm watching somebody be like handed a lifelong body image problem right now.
Oh, for sure.
And it was crazy, but it was.
It kind of felt like a scene out of a John Hughes film, but not.
Totally, yeah. You can see Molly Ringwald putting that dress on for the first time, like adjusting the shoulders haphazardly or whatever. And I was offended that even though they had those stylists, that her hair never got any better.
Yeah. Despite
even
all
into the
efforts.
Olympics, it was just that hard hairspray, not bleached nonsense, and
the feather.
Helmet.
Yeah.
An 80s helmet.
yeah.
Other things that stood out to the movie, Todd? Anything in Sharp Edges? there was a lot of scenes that just kind of stuck with me.
Oh, well, this had less to do with Tonya, but she's preparing for the Nationals, and there's this build-up to the Nationals, and she's there with the camera, and the Nationals start, and I was like, well, why? I'm used to figure skating, and they jump, and they have their program or whatever. But, and it was interesting because you do these, and we'll talk about that in a second, but make these patterns on the ice that you get judged on. And it's about a 2-minute scene, it feels like, that is just complete quiet. Like, I kept waiting for the crowd to start or the music to start. And I noticed that the entire theater, too, everyone was just silent watching Tonya skate these patterns that she has been judged on. And it was captivating just watching her do the little moves.
It felt to me like it was a dog show, and it was like the judges going around and lifting the tail of a dog and inspecting its rear.
So part of the ice skating finals, I guess, is you have to do these very specific patterns on the ice, and then hordes of judges. I don't know. They had like 15
on
of them
the ice.
On the ice, a bunch of old people in like the 1980s parkas, and they go down and they look to see like where your bevel hinge, or what? Not hinge is the wrong word, but you change sides of the skate to make this very specific pattern, and apparently. The director said at the end that used to be a huge part of figure skating, and
like
that's where
60% of the score was based on their technical accuracy to be able to, to stay on that figure eight,
and that's why it's called figure skating.
Exactly.
Yeah. But then they excised it because it's not exciting for television.
And we saw one clip where Tonya brought out the ice marker.
Oh yeah, when she was.
I had no idea.
And I leaned over the mark. I'm like, "What is that thing?"
I'm like, "She's making a figure eight." And you're like, "What?"
What? She puts the figure in figure skating.
Yeah.
But it was just so candid and so real and unvarnished. I think that was a part of it because this was the late '80s, and this was before the real world and before like all of the things that we associate with what a reality TV would like. So not only did the candidacy, what would you call
candidity?
The candidity, the candidness. There we go. The candidness of the interviews I think that's why it felt shocking, because it was real. It wasn't like they did multiple takes and there was like music behind it. It was just,
and it really is like maybe the only opportunity where you get a real view at Tonya Harding. Everything else has been coached and changed and tweaked, and
everything
an
else
opinion.
Been put in an ill-fitting dress.
Yeah, exactly. This was real, and to me it was remarkable that Sandra just had this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Sandra did make the comment at the beginning about I, Tonya. She's like, "You all know that this is a work of fiction, don't you?" Like, and from her perspective, how edited, how curated the presentation of who Tonya is to the people was overwhelming to her, at least, significant at least.
Yeah. Another parallel I kind of drew between Tonya Harding and O.J. Simpson, where obviously Tonya has not killed anyone, but both of them, outside of the controversy that would engulf their life, are astonishing stories in and of that. Like, I remember watching the O.J. documentary that came out last year, not the fictionalized one, but the documentary, and like O.J.'s story is a phenomenal American success story that is like crazy interesting, and that's before anything happens. And like that's Tonya too. I mean, she accomplished what like still only 3 women have been able to do with her triple axel, and like she did it 25 years ago or whatever. And that story and her coming from her background, that is all just fascinating. And then on top of that, it gets complicated and interesting and intriguing, and it's crazy how that's overshadows the.
Do we still hate OJ as much as we don't hate Tonya?
I think people still hate him.
I think
right. It's interesting.
So. But I mean, like I don't know. I haven't done
the
homework on him. Yeah. Is that where we ended?
Yeah, I think that's where we landed on him.
It'd be the O.J. Simpson Film Festival coming up next.
It's Naked Gun and
the Towering Inferno.
The Towering Inferno. It was funny. This is way offside, but I take care of an autistic boy who's 13 now, and so I showed him Naked Gun, and he loves it and stuff like that. And he's also into sports and stuff like that, and so he asked who the OJ was, and I said, "Oh, that's OJ Simpson." And he's like, "Oh, who's that?" And like, I'm like, "How do I explain this to someone new?" So, but anyway, well, yeah. Any last thoughts on Sharp Edges, the documentary?
I'm curious. The crowd that was there to attend was fascinating to me because it was all walks of life, and so I'm curious, like, how you got the word out, where these people were coming from, because there was a significant number of gray hairs, and young people, hipsters, and there was a really interesting.
And then the Tonya Harding hardcore fans.
You're right.
From Brooklyn.
So how did people find out about this?
Well, I like to consider myself a marketing guru. No, I mean, it started with the Facebook hustle, and then the theater was placing ads in the paper and stuff like that.
The Alberta Rose.
Yeah, yep. And I think when the things really heated up, I sent out a press release shortly before I reached out to you guys, and it got picked up first in, I don't remember the order, but it was like the Tribune ran it, and then next thing I know, it was like everywhere. And so we had like 6 or 7 like pretty substantial write-ups on it. And Sandra has a name for herself because she's an established, successful person. So she brought in a lot of people that know her or know her work. But I think the whole Tonya Harding phenomena, Tonya fever, as I called it at one point, that helped. People want more of the story, and I think in a lot of ways people were expecting like a really sassy, fun prequel to I, Tonya.
Yeah.
And people were curious.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It was well attended, and
yeah, but it was interesting, and we were trying to figure that out. They're like, well, there is definitely either an NPR crowd or a crowd that reads newspapers, and that was the older end, and the younger one were like, well, hipsters and people who love Tonya Harding and stuff like that. But it was fun to see so many different.
Yeah, it was a good crowd, and they had some really good questions during the Q&A.
Yep.
Very
and there's one person, or how many people flew in from Brooklyn?
Yeah, so there's these 2 kids from Brooklyn. And like I saw on the Sandra's film wall, like somebody commented, "Oh, we're coming from New York," and like people always say stuff like that, And sure enough, there they were. And so I talked to them afterwards. I'm like, "You guys are crazy! Like, what are you doing here? Like, surely you have like a family vacation or whatever." And she's like, "No, we came for this." And so I've befriended them on Facebook, of course, and they started their day like. I think they might have even been on the same flight as Sandra. I'm not sure. Because they got in, they went to the ice rink. They went basically on a sightseeing tour. They went to the...
we could be tour guides.
I was going to say, that's why we need the Portland at the Movies travel map. So you can go to all the little locations.
Not a terrible idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what they did with their vacation was basically...
Did they know Sandra or they
No.
just... Okay.
No, they had
Because I
never
thought, well,
met
maybe...
her.
Because she's out in New York, correct?
Yeah. No, they had no...
Wow.
Nothing.
That's pretty humbling.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, and they were lovely people.
Yeah.
So I would call them crazy, but they were cool. So,
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty rad.
Well, I had one last question regarding Sharp Edges. A couple of times it was mentioned the Clackamas ice rink.
Yeah.
Is that the same as Lloyd Center?
No, Clackamas Town Center, which they actually have removed the ice rink. It is no longer at Clackamas Town Center.
When did that happen?
I think a couple years ago they did.
I never remember an ice rink there.
Yeah, so that is mostly where she trained. She did bounce around, I'm sure, to a bunch of different... Because part of her story, too, is how much the community donated time and money and energy to kind of keep her... and that was another thing, too, about the mom. Like, the mom isn't only a villain, and Sandra pointed that out at the end. She's like... Mom worked 16 to 18 hours a day and gave everything she had to Tanya's lessons and the expensive equipment and all that stuff too. So even she is a complex character.
Yeah, my partner Nick, as a boy, would hang out at the Clackamas Town Center and just to watch Tonya. And,
wow!
Oh, really?
And so he got stepped on by her skate one time. And, that's his.
Wouldn't that be
claim
funny if
to
he's
fame.
in the background of Sharp Edges somewhere, just a 10-year-old Nick or however old he was?
So I think she got her first time on the ice was Lloyd Center. but all the training that she did with
Yeah.
Santa Clackamas.
Yeah, interesting. Well, should we move on to the hit thriller
Let's get on to the meat of the show.
Breakaway?
So,
How did you? Breakaway was made in 1996. There's 20 seconds maybe filmed in Portland. The rest of it filmed in in an LA alley somewhere that they had access to. But how did you? I mean, I guess how did you stumble on this film that you brought to us? Like, did you always know about it, or did you find it like in
No.
researching? Okay,
I
so
mean,
this-
I could be really like cool and be like, yeah, it's
Oh, I
my
got-
favorite movie. But
old
that would make
school
me look
Breakaway
sad.
fan. Yeah.
No. So, I was doing my Tonya homework, and of course she's got an IMDb, and I was like, what? So I tracked down a copy. I bought a transferred VHS, like DVD bootleg thing, and the quality was absolutely terrible. But yeah, that she's actually been in 2 other films. One is called
Yeah, I saw it yesterday,
yeah,
and I
something.
couldn't find it.
It's like a boxing movie that she's got like 5 seconds in. And
Yeah, with,
prize fighter.
yes,
just
with
hit me.
Gary
Yes.
Busey.
Yes, yep. I own it, but I have yet to.
Please tell me it was filmed in Portland.
I hope.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Maybe. And then she recently did a film here called like Road Signs or something. It's not out yet, but I was talking
interesting.
with a friend, and he did some of the music for the soundtrack. And I was like, oh my gosh, you have to tell me about it. He's like, oh, it's terrible.
Yes,
I was like, well, then I want to see it. And
I want to see it even more.
Coming up next on Portland at the Movies.
I guess Ron Jeremy is also in it.
Oh my!
Of course he
So
is.
it's got to be great.
All right.
With
well,
that stamp of quality.
Yeah.
So yeah, Breakaway, starring quote unquote Tonya Harding, who is introducing. Yeah, that's how this movie starts. Is it gives its list of credits and names, and then at the very end it says introducing Tonya Harding. And I was talking with Brian before that. I thought it was weird to say introducing when she's like the most famous person in the world at this point. It seemed a little strange to me.
Well, when you introduce someone, like, their debut on film.
And
or
that's
whatever.
what, yeah, and that's what
that's-
Brian was saying too. And I was like, but then you do an and or with a with maybe, but
Featuring.
like
Featuring.
featuring
Right.
because yeah, I just thought it was funny introducing like no one knew who she was.
Who's that? That name's familiar.
But the copy we found at Movie Madness actually has a copy of Breakaway. So if you
shout out to Movie Madness.
shout out to Movie Madness. But we also found a copy that we that has a German title. So instead of Breakaway, it's
What is it called, Todd?
It's called Flucht in the Hole.
Straight Out of Hell, I think. Is
Yes, it's called
translated.
Aligned in Hell, but yeah,
Oh,
Straight
okay.
Out of Hell, which
I guess that's what they're
makes
going for.
no sense. Straight
Wow.
Out of Hell
It's just like a really exhilarating title.
to sell that foreign crowd.
I also noticed that Breakaway was produced by Breakaway Productions.
Oh,
It's
was
always a
it?
positive sign when they have
Yeah, Frozen Assets was produced by Frozen Assets Productions.
Uh-huh.
That is
sign of quality.
No, that's a standard practice in
Money
in
laundering.
Hollywood. Precisely is you set up the corporation, you bill everything to it, and then all of the expenses can be jury rigged basically, so that the movie ultimately doesn't make a profit,
Yeah.
so that they don't have to pay people based
Royalties
on
and-
royalties and,
yeah.
all this stuff.
I,
So it's
I doubt that it made a profit.
but it was
All that money
guaranteed
from
that it never would.
Fluked in the Hole.
In trying to find some information on this film today, I did see what Tonya Harding was paid to be in this film.
Oh, really?
Did you see that too?
Mhm.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us?
What I read is that she got $10,000 for 2 days of work.
Okay. It felt like 2 days of work.
Yeah, the filming schedule says that it was 2 days in LA, but then I also read another article that said that when they started to piece it together, it wasn't looking quite right. So they flew back to Portland to do like a little more Tonya footage, and the only thing that I can think of is like they wanted more Tonya in it.
Yeah.
Right.
And one of the problems that made for the filmmakers was that time had gone by. Her body had changed. She had gotten breast implants.
Oh, no.
And there's a quote somewhere in my stack of notes here, but actually,
Yeah, go ahead and find it. I will wait forever.
It's pretty good.
Well, and while you're looking for him, it is a little misleading because how many minutes would you say Tonya Harding was in this movie?
Do you have an answer?
I don't. I didn't this time.
I would say she was in there for no more than 6 minutes.
Yeah,
I would say that
definitely
too.
less than 10.
And
gotta
I
be
kept
6 or 7.
waiting because I thought the whole thing was filmed in Portland, and so when it opened in Los Angeles with two characters that weren't at all Tonya Harding, I kept thinking that storyline was going to lead to Portland, but even Tanya's character is like irrelevant to the story.
Yeah,
And
totally. You can tell that was a late addition.
do you think that character was added when they got Tonya, or did they go? How did Tonya like? Why? How? She's not the star of this movie, and her role is not like cool, or it's just like an extraneous second girlfriend. Like, how did this happen? Do you know?
Well, I think that if you're going to try to, like, would we be sitting here talking about Breakaway if it was just, you know what I mean?
We would, because it was filmed in Portland. So
True. Okay, fair enough. But, I think the guy who wrote it and produced it even said, like, this is great. I don't care if she can act or not. Like, you can't buy press. Like, this has gotten us. So
when was the scandal?
94.
Okay, so this is 2 years after that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know, did she ever go kind of into hiding, or was she always, like, did she just never go away after that scandal? Did she kind of lay back and this was her big comeback, or is she just, I can't remember.
So I believe that she kind of tried to, but there was so much trigger happy press. So like whenever she would have a fight with a boyfriend, throwing hubcaps at him, or that was a thing.
I'd forgotten, but yeah,
and which evoked. Then there was a video game made where you could take hubcaps as Tonya and throw it at a boyfriend, like, and so that like extended. And so I think she tried to lay low, but the nature of that just didn't happen. Is
interesting.
My belief.
She also had a short-lived girl group, like a musical act.
What?
Yeah, and that was like her
Did she
immediate
now?
bounce back from the Olympics. Is she opened for Kool in the Gang here in Portland, and one of the articles said that you couldn't hear her sing over the booing of the people in the audience.
Wow, that's rough.
Yeah, but I have seen clips on YouTube of her performing, and
Which we will hear right now. No, I think this is from.
Now there's nowhere to hide. Since you pushed my love aside.
I don't understand what's happening. What is that? Is confusing.
I don't know if that's her.
Wow. Anyway, so you can YouTube rabbit
That's
hole
a Tonya
that.
Harding cover.
Yes.
Can we start a Tonya Harding cover band?
Cover band.
yes.
Now I've lost all concentration. What were we even talking about?
We were talking about Breakaway. Let's just state that it's a bad movie.
Yes.
It's even by our standards. There's okay. I will admit there are a handful of laugh out loud funny moments.
Yes, I would agree with that. Do you want to kind of set the movie up maybe and give us a framework?
Let's try. Okay, so it stars not Tonya Harding,
Right.
Other blonde girl,
Yeah.
Who is a courier for the mafia.
Yeah. You know, the mafia in Los Angeles, how they all have Jersey
Couriers.
accents.
And she is trying to get out of the job. She wants to retire and move to Fiji, and she wants to break away, should we say?
She wants to align in hell. And she has a boyfriend
Yes,
who, Carl? No.
Carter.
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 Dan.
Yeah.
All the
Dan
guys in this
later.
movie look the same.
This is the first thing I told you afterwards. I'm like, could you tell any of those people? I felt like I had white people face blindness. Like I could not tell any of those people apart. So she has a boyfriend who's two-timing her with Tonya Harding's character.
Right. And he's a professional bomb maker.
Of course.
You know, like there
That's what he tells Tonya Harding. He makes bombs.
And we do see him making bombs at the kitchen table where you make bombs. And so not Tonya Harding wants to break away. Wow.
Myra.
Myra. Her name is Myra there.
Yeah.
And so she has a hit put out on her by the mob boss. And for some reason, she has to wait 24 hours before she can escape. And that's why she ends up in the hotel room with the other male character, Dan.
That she meets at the art gallery.
That she meets at the Exhibit Art Gallery.
Exhibit.
Not the rapper, just the art gallery. So that's kind of the framework. And she has to hide out, and then she's going to end up in Fiji with the money with Carter, her boyfriend.
And Joe Estevez is out to kill her.
And Joe Estevez, who is set up to be...
Not Martin Sheen.
Not Martin Sheen. Yeah, so I was telling Brian... So Joe Estevez is Martin Sheen's brother. So that is Charlie Sheen and Emilio Estevez's uncle. And he sounds exactly like Martin Sheen. So much so that advertising agencies will hire him to do their voiceovers. And every once in a while, because I believe he's a conservative, he will do like gun pro NRA stuff. And so everyone's like, why is Martin Sheen telling me to buy an assault rifle? That doesn't make any sense at all. But yeah, he is still working like crazy, but he shows up in the worst B movies of all time. But he is constantly working. And he's kind of like how when you saw a late Steven Seagal movie like Out for Justice or something like that, we are to believe that Steven Seagal is an assassin that we are all to be afraid of, but they're just like puffy, lumpy, wheezing.
I resemble that remark.
Yeah. Just always a sheen of sweat on them.
Right.
Yeah, not a threat necessarily.
Right. But he's set up as the ultimate assassin of the mob.
He's brought in after the first people can't take care of business.
Yes, because not Tonya Harding. Gina is a badass, which we see in a fight scene at the very beginning, and then a wonderful escape scene at the airport, where she is chased on her motorcycle around planes.
That was one of the highlights of the film.
That was.
Do you have that clip available, Todd?
I don't. I can find it here a second.
Okay.
Although it's just going to be sounds of her. So she drives her car to the airport to look into one of the hangars to make her final drop off. That goes wrong. The guy who's supposed to take it starts trying to kill her. And so instead of getting in her car and driving away, she just runs onto the tarmac and
holding a gun.
Holding a gun, and the guy dressed like Indiana Jones, who is the mob boss's nephew, I believe, but he's wearing the same overcoat. He's wearing like a satchel of some sort, a fedora. He gets on a motorcycle and starts chasing her, and they have a gunfight.
Between the aircraft,
standing behind an airplane, which doesn't offer a whole lot of protection because like everything up to your upper chest is just open. Airplanes are tall.
That's true.
But my favorite part of that scene is that they gunfire back and forth or whatever, and then she starts walking away like she's a badass, and like we see in the behind her, the motorcycle comes around the corner and starts sneaking up on her, even though it's a motorcycle.
I might hear something behind me.
And then she does that dramatic look behind her shoulder. And then the motorcycle starts speeding at her. She starts running at the motorcycle
because she's firing her gun and runs out of bullets. She's like, what am I going to do? I will charge the motorcycle.
And I will leap 20 feet in the air, causing the motorcycle to crash?
And flip over the motorcycle. It's probably because he wasn't expecting that.
I guess, and he falls down, and it's that Family Guy thing where Peter skins his knee, and for the next 20 minutes is because that's the motorcycle guy getting off of the tarmac. And instead of getting in her car and driving away, how does she escape, Brian?
She grabs on the back of a delivery truck.
Like the back of a bread truck is driving by on the tarmac, and she
tarmac of the airport
jumps on the back and rides into town.
It's comical. It's straight out of a cartoon.
It is, and then they show her the next scene, like downtown. She's still clinging to the back of the truck. And
the whole time through downtown LA, she was riding this bread truck
and hops up at the art gallery
in her outfit. Which we should mention.
So yeah, her.
Mark, do you have a photo of the outfit?
I don't yet, but I'll.
I sent you one.
Okay.
So at the beginning of this movie, she's dressed in like this very 90s chic. I couldn't figure out if it was a skirt or shorts.
I think it's a skirt with like a very frilly blouse.
Yeah.
It's like a
glamorous
bib.
That blouse was insane. It was like the Seinfeld puffy shirt, and there's a close up of her where there's not only the frill in front, like where the puffy shirt is, there are two gigantic, like foot long. There it is. Foot long.
They can't see it yet.
They can't see it. Foot long lapels coming off of it, and like she does a couple running scenes in it, and it's like it's flowing in the breeze. But that's what she jumps in to jump over the motorcycle.
Worth mentioning, through all of these shenanigans, she has a metal lunchbox with like $300,000 handcuffed to herself.
That's right.
That's really safe.
That was the delivery. And at one point, and maybe I missed this, in that in the scene where she needs to drop off that lunchbox in the beginning, and she gets in the fight to kind of like establish that she's a badass or whatever, she picks up something and bashes one of the guys over the head, and money flies everywhere. But then she picks up the pail and leaves. Was that different money, or did she just leave all that money there? I was confused.
They're looking at the outfit.
Oh, they're looking at that outfit. Isn't that... And either short shorts or a frilly skirt of some sort, which of course is what you do mob deliveries in.
Totally.
Yeah. It's like a sexy librarian from the 1800s or something. I don't know.
She just took off her powdered wig too.
And of course it gets torn up a little bit.
She does get shot, once, and it tears in the shoulder or whatever.
I swear that the lunch pail had the Tesla logo on it too.
Oh, really?
If you saw that. It had like a T.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like that's what she delivered the money in, was the metal lunch pail.
That was another good scene, is when she was wearing that outfit and she gets into the car chase, and she gets out of her car and there's a car. It's very similar to the motorcycle scene, but there's a car speeding towards her and she's shooting like two hands. That's just general gun use in this movie, period. There's no recoil in any weapon. Like later in the film, he's holding the shotgun like down kind of Scarface style by his crotch. And just...
Do you think, because I did notice this on this when I had to watch this again.
I got to watch
this again. Got to experience this again. I noticed in the theater there was a lot of, not squibs are when they're on your body, I guess, but like the fire that lands around you when they rig it to explode or whatever when the bullet hits. There were so many of them that I wondered when computer animation let you just like drop in stuff like that. It didn't look like it because it's too old, but they used an impressive amount of explosions just like in the area. I was kind of impressed by that.
Well, they had to spend $300,000 on something.
Yeah, I mean, I think that could have been it. And then the car crash that you were setting up there is, I mean, that was impressive.
That
for this
was
level of
film. Yeah, and that was right out of the gate,
nowhere.
too.
So back to that scene. She hops out of her car and she's pointing two guns, just blasting away at this oncoming speeding car. And then she just starts running away from her car, and then the speeding car hits her car. In the slightest amount of contact, the car suddenly flips upside down and bursts into flames. And then she's just walking away like in slow motion.
She does that like, cool guys don't look at explosions or whatever.
Right.
She's just like doing that walk away. And both cars explode as if they were just made of gasoline.
On cue.
It was
It's a work of like B-movie art.
And there's no cops ever in this movie.
We noticed that.
I was reading something about somebody that gave it a review that I was looking at last night noted it, that there are multiple scenes where people are just have open warfare in the middle of suburban streets, and there's never anyone that like looks out their window or like there's no cops ever anywhere, and that was really bizarre. White guy face blindness.
We could talk about Portland, I guess.
Yeah, so Portland is in this movie, but it did did they film Tonya Harding at all in Los Angeles, and they came here to do pickup scenes with her?
Yeah, so, well, the backstory on that is the day before shooting, everybody got together, I'm assuming like in this guy's garage or whatever, and Tonya was a no-show.
Was this here or in Los Angeles?
In Los Angeles.
Okay.
So they kind of freaked out because like she's the reason that people would come to it. Anyway, so he had to fly up here and find her because he didn't have her phone number and he didn't have her address. So he went to Beaver Creek and like sweet talked the people of Beaver Creek to like letting her giving up her address. So anyway, he tracks her down and like basically begs her to come and be part of this film, even though she had already been paid and agreed to it and stuff. So she came down with her parole officer because her parole was for 3 years.
Okay.
And she couldn't leave the state
The
without,
Approval.
special. Yep. So they filmed her bits in L.A. and then the reshoot, like 6 months later or whatever, was done up in Portland.
Yeah, so that's why Portland is just literally just fleeting in this movie. There's one establishing shot of Omzi, and then they do an interior.
There's Omzi
of a bridge. I didn't really know that bridge existed in Omzi across the like a little walkway.
So Omzi there. I think this is our first time we've come across Omzi at Portland at the movies, which is a little bit surprising.
I put it on our map last night, and I noted that it was the first one that we've seen. Time we've seen it.
And so they call it. I didn't catch this when we saw it in the theater, but when I rewatched it, they show the establishing shot of Omzi, and then they cut to an interior of Omzi, and then they have like a announcement over the radio there, and they just call it the museum. They leave out Oregon. They just call it the Museum of Science and Industry.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's not Oregon.
And then there's a scene out in the Esplanade where you see there's that little outcropping or whatever where you can,
which is literally right behind Omzi.
Yeah, and so you can see a nice little shot of downtown and the Markham Bridge and stuff like that. But that is the only. So I was kind of surprised. I thought more of it was going to be filmed here, but and that's what I guessed too, is that was a reshoot. That's why it's not called Portland. Like I said, I kept expecting Portland to play some sort of role in this Los Angeles film, but I was denied.
So they got Tonya. Should we talk about her acting?
Is that what we're calling it now?
Well,
she's not an actress.
No. She's really not. But it's funny the way that I pull out a press clipping from the Weekly World News, so you know it is good.
The paper.
But if I may, it says
also known as the paper.
The paper. Disgraced skating star Tonya Harding is getting rave reviews from cast and crew on the set of her new movie Breakaway. It goes on to say. By Joe Estevez, credible name in acting. Instinct. That's what Tonya has. Instinct, he said. And then the director...
It might be the wrong instinct, but boy, does she have it.
The director said she's really got a great look. She's got a fantastic body, and she's very photogenic. So...
She looked a lot like... I thought she looked a lot like Amy Adams in this movie. There was a couple, especially the scene that I'll play on the Esplanade, when her hair is pulled back. She looks a lot like Amy Adams. I was really surprised. But here's a little bit of some acting with Tonya and Carter.
You're out of your mind. You got me up at the crack of dawn to do this?
Gotta stay in shape, baby. Never know when you're gonna need to run.
Yeah, but we could have slept in or ran later.
Not me, I got a full day.
Tell me where the explosion's going off so I can be in the clear.
It's not that. Something came up. Friend in need.
Where am I going to meet your friends, Carter?
I never mix business with pleasure.
I should do business with you. I could see you more.
You want somebody blown up?
Besides you? No.
You'd never make it in my line of work. You're not tough enough.
You'd be surprised how tough I really am. From now on, call me when you want to see me. We'll make an appointment.
So there is a little bit of acting from Tonya Harding.
You pretty much played half of her screen time.
I really did. Yeah, that's it. And it's so weird because her character is nothing. It doesn't matter to the story at all.
Yeah. Well, she's in good company, though. I mean, she was keeping up. She was keeping up with her peers.
That's true.
In this film,
that's true. So where even
there's an interesting. An interesting little quote here. This is from, what's his name? Eric Gardner. He says, once production began, blah, 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 I would stand off camera and read her lines, and she would repeat them. Oh, no, this is from Sean Dash, Recall's director Sean Dash. But she had no problem with the fighting scenes. So, shortly after the praises were sung to the Weekly World News, they were starting to admit that, she was just being used for her star status.
Yeah. to put
Can you
them in the
blame 'em?
seats.
Instinct.
So you mentioned Eric Gardner, who was one of the writers for this movie. Did you happen to look up on the IMDb?
Did not.
The other, like almost everyone else involved in this movie, either did nothing else or very sporadic and nothing. But he has been an editor, producer, director, and like he worked in the music department of Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. He was the editor for Survivor, the TV show. He edited Breakaway. He directed some random stuff, and he has been busy and continues to be busy and like doing all of this random stuff. So I was really kind of shocked to see how many different things he's been able to do since then. But he's kind of the only one that has done.
He's the real success.
He
Bounce
is,
back.
yeah. It should have been introducing Eric Gardner.
I did notice the director had gone on to do a bunch of things for like the Learning Channel and
Yeah.
the Discovery Channel.
Yes,
Discovery
he
Channel.
did How It's Made. Like I wish we would have watched How It's Made for this because I would have much
How-
rather watched that.
How watching rubber be made is more entertaining.
He did.
than
He did
Tonya
the
Harding
rubber
acting.
episode. I saw that.
He,
This week's episode of Rubber.
He said signing Tonya got us the kind of publicity you couldn't buy. Now a Discovery Channel showrunner. The fact that we couldn't make money with that kind of press is what got me out of the B movie business.
Wow.
So,
Wow. That is true, though.
that's sad.
It's sad.
Well, we can thank Tonya for having that episode of Rubber.
That's true.
There you go.
So after not Tonya, Myra escapes on that back of her bread truck and ends up at the gallery. She meets a guy there that is looking for a blind date, and Myra pretends that she is the blind date, and that guy's name is Dan, and his life is just altered forever because he becomes a felon and a murderer in the next day. But I wanted to talk about, so they meet there. She pretends to be his blind date so that she can kind of get away. There's a fight because Indiana Jones guy who's chasing her inexplicably after she
Just drives to that place.
right. So she had jumped on this truck and just rode into Los Angeles, and he somehow walked right into the gallery like 10 minutes later to go chase her.
I didn't even think of that.
It's
You're
crazy.
paying more attention than me.
all this happened on the second viewing. But so she and Dan go on a quasi date after this that begins at sunset, lasts what must be hours and hours and hours.
At one point, they're fencing
They are
together on the pier.
Fencing on the beach.
They are fencing on the
Yeah.
beach
She
in
asked-
fencing gear.
She asked him to show her something that she's never done before.
Oh yeah, and he goes, a picnic, and she goes, a picnic,
You haven't been on a picnic with me before.
and then they're fencing on the beach, which is insane. You need to be hooked up to electric.
And they know how to fence.
They both know to
Like,
fence. They both have full on fencing
the-
gear.
The statistical odds of that happening, of like, how many people do you know that know how to fence? I think I've met 2 in my life.
Yeah.
But how many anthropology professors do you know?
Yes,
true.
that's
It's
true. Oh, that was so amazing. So I couldn't quite figure out. She is hiding out and is using Dan to kill time and to kind of lay low. Why does she need to wait a certain amount of time to escape? She wants to run away with Clark, whatever his name is.
The only thing I can think is maybe she was waiting for Carter to free up to become available to go run away with her.
You would think he would prioritize that. I mean, what is he doing? He's sitting in his house making bombs.
Yeah, I feel like he was the time constraint because she was going to meet up with him and he had some
And he
stuff to do.
couldn't.
He had to deal with Gina,
We-
who is the Tonya thing.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm not sure why they.
That
can't.
was really strange, I thought. And there's a bunch of mobsters in this movie, like I mentioned. I couldn't keep any of them apart.
Yeah, Anton is like the head guy, right?
Okay, he's the big boss.
Yeah, and so he's got this like slew of people who are totally incompetent, and
They
that's when he
really
hires
are.
Joe Estevez, who is
Okay, because
great.
he was surrounded by and every
Yeah.
time they showed, there was like 8 of them. Like
Yeah.
8 of these Goomba guys
Playing basketball.
playing basketball
suits.
in
Yeah.
suits.
Yeah.
And
I was waiting for Tommy Wiseau and his football to show up.
Oh, hi. And every time they show this group, they did it during a fight. There's the big shootout at the end of the movie too, where they're all trying to run through the desert trying to kill each other. And every time they show this group of 8 people, it's like it's a scene from West Side Story because they're all like gathered down. They're like on their haunches, like ready to snap, like in a little group to be filmed together, like not facing each other, but like
Eating
in a
hamburgers. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah.
When you're a jet all the way.
Totally. Oh my gosh, I thought that was hilarious. They go to a hideout. They go hideout in a hotel for a while.
Todd really took the notes on this one.
I really did on this way back.
Yeah. Well, it is kind of weird. You know, Myra's got this guy in the hotel, and he's like, okay, you know what? He gives her a back rub with a beer. and
she's all bruised, and she's still lying to him. He still doesn't know anything about that she is unusual, other than it's obviously she's trying to get away from something.
Yeah.
She says something like, my back has never felt better.
Yep.
And take this gross hotel beer.
And then...
and they were laying on top of the hotel comforter.
As you do.
Which is, like, they definitely both have syphilis now. It was just gross.
If they didn't before.
Yeah, so they spend all night in the hotel room. She tries to
steal his car.
She tries to steal his car the next day, but he was one step ahead of her and took the key off the key ring, but she just hotwires it. Tries to drive away. He stands in front of the car, and once again, she just starts running away, like into the streets of Los Angeles. It's the second time, and not the last time. She will just start running down the street, going somewhere. That was crazy. Tanya's fight scene. How did you guys feel about Tanya's big fight scene? Do you guys remember Tanya's big fight scene?
I remember.
Okay.
I would say it was serviceable. It probably filled the need that it needed to fill.
That's what people wanted.
Oh, totally.
You know, though, the problem I had with it, if I really want to be judgy, it's like she comes out in flats, right? So it's not like a sexy fight scene,
right?
And she's kind of in like a matronly,
like
a dress she might have made herself.
Right before, this is from Laura Ashley. Right before the fight scene, so she's running away with Joe Esterhaus. No, not Joe Esterhaus. Yes, screenwriter of Showgirls, Joe Esterhaus.
If only.
Joe,
it would be so much better.
Oh, this movie would have been so good. Nomi shows up and
don't get me going.
That's right.
I will absolutely start a Showgirls podcast with you right now.
Okay, let's do it.
But she is running away with Joe Estevez, and for some reason, Joe Estevez takes off his fedora and his overcoat and dresses Tanya in it.
Yeah, so he's gonna.
What was the point of that?
He wants to make her look like him, so he can get the sneak on these bad guys.
Oh,
so basically, she's the bait for this.
Okay, yeah.
And then he says to her, which is probably my favorite line of the movie, he's like, have you ever fired a gun before? And she goes, I know how to take care of myself.
Should I find that? I'm totally gonna find
if you
that
could.
Yeah.
Because, you know, again, it's delivered in that really convincing kind of tone.
Instinctual?
Yes, instinct. That's what she has.
Now, is that the scene they had to change due to the conditions of her probation?
That's a different scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, why don't we talk about, there is another scene where
she's in her apartment, like, you know, I don't know, making a
sitting
sandwich.
at the table or whatever.
Yeah, in fact, she is making a sandwich.
Making a sandwich.
And, oh my God, the names on this one, it's killing me. Not Toby. Whatever his name is, her boyfriend, who's two-timing her, sneaks in through the window because, you know, the money, and he's going to hide the money in her house. But she knows something's up, so she's ready to defend herself. So in the original version of the script, she turns around and would, like, pull a gun on him. But the parole person that was sent to Los Angeles with her did not like that. And so in the finished film, she pulls a butter knife.
Yeah, she's just holding a butter knife threateningly.
Yeah,
so that's pretty good. So here's a little bit of the that little exchange between Tanya and Joe Estevez in a parking garage for some reason.
Put this on. Hey, look up.
Why? So I can do target practice?
You want to fight?
I can take care of myself.
Let you get on it. All right, look. I want you to stand here. Don't move.
And so he runs off and shoots some guys. She gets in. My favorite part about her fight. So there's a couple kicks, which for how athletic she is, was not all wowed by her kicking prowess. But she kicks a guy down, not only down a flight of stairs, but as the guy is falling down the flight of stairs, he corners the little switchback and like falls down more stairs. Like he makes an effort to go around the little tiny corner of the stairs and fall down even more, which I thought was just amazing.
I think the best part of the fight scene is when she takes off the hat and the coat as she's like walking towards the fight.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That's definitely her moment. That's one of the gifts that we posted this last week of her walking up to her fight and taking on that one guy.
And in fairness, if you were about to get in a fight, and the hat came off and it was Tonya Harding, you'd probably run. I mean,
or just fall down the stairs.
Imagine?
Yeah,
I would gladly fall down these stairs.
Yeah,
you think? Yeah, maybe that guy just threw himself down the stairs. So for some reason that fight happens. Then Tonya and not Tonya and Carter all end up in a house somewhere to hole up and hide.
Yeah, so somebody's got a cabin, right? And one of the mob guys knows about it, but he doesn't realize till later. So they're hiding out in the cabin, and that's when everything comes to a point. It's when the mob remembers that there's this abandoned cabin they all have access to, and that's probably where they're hiding. So they go up there.
I thought I just missed the reason. I guess I didn't even think about how they all knew where the hideout was.
I caught that like the third time I saw it. I was like, oh, there is a
connection.
See, this movie is worth watching multiple times.
It's so
you pick up on
layered.
so much more.
This movie is so deep,
nuanced.
But then Carter, the two-timing boyfriend, tries to kill Dan.
Yeah, doesn't like the new guy.
Doesn't like the new guy, Dan, who is still part of it. Like, if I was looking for a blind date at the art museum...
I think at that point he had fallen for Myra, and Myra was falling for him, and so it's so hard to let go.
It's a story for the ages. Who am I to judge?
Yeah, when you do fencing with somebody... is that when you fence with somebody?
When you beach fence, it's for life.
It's real. And then with $300,000 on the line. I mean,
I know that was just a weird
number of money,
bizarre low amount for like risking
Strangely
your
enough,
life.
it is the budget.
They did.
Oh, that's true.
They didn't. The movie didn't have the budget to say that it was $1 million.
You can't even afford to pretend that.
So Carter ends up. They tie him up because he tries to attack Dan with an axe at one point. And they pull a gun on him and tie him up. And then the mob comes and there's a big shootout.
Yeah.
And then, is that the exciting conclusion?
And then some guy catches on fire and they ride a horse.
Oh, that's right. There's a horse.
They
make
it
the guy on fire.
It's
like Anchorman.
Yeah. They take care of business there, and then they go to take care of the big guy Anton.
Oh yeah.
At his house, and that's when Estevez gets he pushes him off of the railing.
This was after he threw his fax machine over the balcony.
the main mob
and he had
boss.
been shot too, and so that's when it comes to a head.
There's a scene where he gets mad. A fax comes over his fax machine, and it says, I forget what it says.
He had killed.
Bill me for Nikki.
Bill me for Nikki. Yeah,
he killed his nephew or whatever,
and
he
so
faxed him.
He slowly walks over to the fax machine and pulls out the fax and looks at it and picks up the fax machine and walks over like Frankenstein's monster to the balcony and throws the fax machine off, and that was amazing. And then he was firing a gun off of that balcony too. Then what happens? And this movie is over.
This is about the time when I was really struggling to stay awake.
It was, yeah. This was late at night by the time and this is when I looked around and I was like, there are 11 people left.
Yeah, it definitely kind of, people wanted to see Sharp Edges.
Oh, totally.
We wanted to see this.
Yeah.
It's like, when you go to a buffet and then at the end, only the really, really fat people are not calling the audience fat, but these were diehard people.
Well, and I would imagine if Tonya was in the movie more, people would have stayed.
Maybe.
No, I mean, so they end up. there's that gross sex scene where he's just tracing his finger up and down like her entire body, which was just really gross. And then at some point, the old man was in a Speedo, which was upsetting. He kept getting out. He kept threatening to get out of the water where the camera was at crotch level. And I was like, no.
Please stay.
Stop. Then she makes not Tonya makes off with the money.
No,
No.
she doesn't, because they've hid the money in Tanya's
apartment.
Yeah, in her
her
oven,
oven.
because she never cooks.
Yeah, we've established that.
I thought for sure they were going to burn the money. It's like,
That's
oh,
what I was
I'm going to
thinking too,
make
yeah.
pizza tonight.
Yeah.
And she turns on the oven.
I should use this after all because they went a great deal of exposition setting up that they never used the oven.
And then they show her, oh, the pizza calls, let's see, 451 degrees.
So then what? No, but Gina still escapes.
Yeah.
Or not Gina. Not Gina. Oh, not Gina.
It's all interchangeable. Myra.
Yeah,
Myra and her new boyfriend Dan, are like,
that's
you know
right.
what? Enough is enough. Let's go to Fiji
Right.
without the money. We don't need the money, right?
We're in love.
So they're on the beach walking away, and it's probably somewhere in LA, obviously, but like they're walking down the beach, and there's like this one umbrella where somebody's like sitting behind it or whatever, and they're having their romantic conversation, like, oh, I wonder whatever happened to the money. Like, I guess we'll never know. It doesn't matter. And then you cut to.
We were not playing a clip from the movie. That was just
No,
actually
that's
you.
my acting.
It was amazing.
Which,
It was better
outshines-
actually than.
Thank you. Yeah. So then they cut to whoever's sitting at the umbrella, and it's sure enough Tonya Harding.
Tonya
Gina.
Harding.
And she has taken the money and gone to Fiji as well. And they just walk by each other, don't realize on the beach.
Yes, they'll see each other at the early bird special.
Yeah.
The next day.
I did see a production photo of them filming that scene, and it was like in a parking lot where they're just having Tonya Harding in a bikini in a parking
They
lot.
just brought in a truckload of sand, and they just had a really.
It's not even
close shot.
sand. She's sitting on like a pallet.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's kind of amazing.
Couldn't afford sand.
But it's like the real actors actually got to film on the beach, and no, Tonya, you just sit right there.
Oh, that's where the main actor, Dan and not Gina, are walking down the beach or whatever, and he says something like, "It's just like shooting a duck."
Exactly.
Like, what does that mean? That's not an expression. It's just like shooting a duck. Was that set up earlier in the movie and I didn't hear it, or I just thought it was a bizarre thing to say?
I don't know.
I know nothing about
Anyway.
shooting ducks.
Anyway.
Let us know in the comments
Let us
below.
know, yes, if that's a famous expression that I didn't know about.
I think shooting ducks is kind of hard.
I would
Like,
think.
it's not an easy.
Not everyone can do it.
Right.
Well, is there anything else that we're forgetting to talk about from Breakaway?
Would you recommend it?
Well, where could one even? You can find it at Movie Madness.
Movie Madness.
Movie Madness.
Would
Or if you are fluent in German, the Amazon Germany.
Oh, you can go get
Amazon.de.
You can go
Yeah.
get fluked into whole.
I have 2 copies, so if I ever have a garage sale, you can come to my garage sale and buy
I
it.
almost thought, because you were telling us a little bit about that beforehand, and I thought you were going to show the German version in the theater, but it was the English version.
That would be exceptionally cruel. I lucked out. So there was this guy Terry from New Zealand who runs a Tonya Harding fan page. Take a second, and he.
Well, what's the stinger on where his webpage is hosted?
It's something like GeoCities. I don't think he has refreshed it in a while.
It's like the Space Jam website. It's just been untouched.
Yes.
He
since
made it right after the
1997.
'94 Olympics. And
Yeah. But he reached out and he was like, "What version of the movie are you showing?" And I was like, "A copy of the VHS."
Director's cut.
Right. And so he's like, "Oh no. Like, let me help you." So he took the German DVD and dubbed it with the English language VHS, which was very, very kind of him to do.
That's
because,
awesome.
Yeah. Otherwise,
Wow.
it was gonna be like mega. I mean, the
That's
copy
pretty
I
impressive.
first had like the blur from when you
Oh, okay.
transfer at the
Yeah.
bottom.
Yeah.
And I was trying to justify why that was okay, and it would have been okay.
Yeah.
But what we ended up with was like
Yeah.
not HD, but like
It was-
digital.
yeah, it was pretty
DVD
good, yeah.
quality.
Yes. Magic.
Awesome. Well, I think that does it.
It
for-
does. I just had a
for
thought.
Tonya. Yeah.
You know, we Well, before we wrap this up, there is one important thing we need to discuss.
Oh.
And we need to talk about what movie we're going to watch for next week.
Mark, why don't you tell us?
Show.
It is your choice for what we are picking next time.
And
no,
the name of the movie, I always get it mixed up with like Harold and Maude and all of the other two named.
Harold and Maude was not filmed in Portland. Go on.
But that would have been amazing if it was. It's
Captain and Tennille,
starring Jim Belushi and Whoopi Goldberg.
Yes.
And it is Homer and Eddie.
There we go.
Homer and Eddie, filmed here in Portland. And so we actually met with Jim Belushi a couple weeks ago.
We had him on the show last week. No, we did not.
I wish we did. But we met him as he was presenting some new strains of his marijuana from his marijuana farm down in Southern Oregon. And so we had him sign our
VHS copy of
Homer
and Eddie. So we will finally, and that's kind of been an in-joke for our show for a while because it is obviously
we cannot escape that movie.
A terrible movie, and it keeps coming up. It was inside. I bought one of those VCRs, like when you shot VHS or straight to VHS, you would have that camcorder that you would put on the loop like a purse, more or less, and you would work that and had all the inputs and stuff like that. And I found one at the Goodwill outlet way out in Hillsboro, and I was like, oh, that's cool. It's only $5, and so we brought it. I was showing you guys, and there was a tape stuck inside it. And I was like, oh, cool, someone's home video from 1986 or whatever it's going to be, and it was an unmarked tape, and so I was like, oh, cool. And so I turned it on, and it was like halfway through whatever it was, and I was like, well, that looks from, is that James Belushi? And I rewound it, and it was someone's home dubbed copy of Homer and Eddie.
Yes. Like they rented it. And
and dubbed it.
Yeah. Wow.
And so that was, and so it's been popping up, and we finally decide.
Porn, really.
It is, yes. as the box says, from the director of Tango and Cash,
Nice.
which is the classic Stallone, Kurt Russell movie. So that will be our next month's show. So do look forward to that. Well, if people wanted to find out more about you, John-Ryan, what can they do? Tell me about A Touch Too Far Productions.
A Touch Too Much Productions.
What did I say?
Far.
It means
a touch too far.
Well, now it's too far.
I think that was a PSA video.
That actually sounded a little too serious, like kind of a sex thing.
Well, now it's too far.
touchtoomuchproductions.com is the occasionally updated event page for all the things that I give
that
birth
you put together.
to. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So Twitter, Facebook, can people find you?
Yeah, everything
Awesome.
/ A Touch Too Much
Cool.
Productions. So
Awesome. Brian, where can people find out more about the Unipiper?
Well, hopefully they're already watching this from the Unipiper's shared live stream, but keep up with all of my ongoings at theunipiper.com or Facebook / the Unipiper.
Nice. Mark, if people wanted to hear more of you and me, what could they do?
They could go to the Mark and Todd Cast at themarkandtoddcast.com
There you
or
go.
our Facebook. And when we're not doing this, we have a show about Portland and some science stuff.
We do. And if you're listening right now, let us know where you're listening from, if it's anywhere interesting. But also you can be hearing us on the Fun Employment Radio Network, which just launched a rebranding of their subscription thing. I don't know what it used to be called, but now it's just called the Fun Employment Radio Supporters Club, the FERSC. So if you are a subscriber to them, you get to hear our show a day early usually. You get to hear a bunch of extra content from them. They started kind of a behind-the-scenes show that is only available to subscribers, and they've just ordered neat enamel pins for their supporters club. So if you are a supporter, you can get one of those pins. You can also visit portlandatthemovies.com/map to find a map of all the locations from the movies we've done so far, including OMSI, with some screenshots of Tonya in this movie. One of them, she's looking at a brain. And then the other one, she's on the Esplanade. And the other one, I'll use this someday. But find out more, listen to our past episodes at portlandatthemovies.com. What should I play at the end?
Ta-
no. Should I play more Tonya Harding singing? Is that what you're gonna say?
Find another video.
Okay, we will play a little bit of Tonya Harding sings country western in Portland bar.
Yeah.
So
Perfect.
there we go.
Promising.
Well, thank you for joining us,
Thanks
John
for
Ryan.
having me. It's been a real treat.
Yeah, it was great to have all the little behind the scenes stuff, and thanks for putting on the festival. It was
Anytime.
looked like a success, and it was fun. So
Thank you. Thanks.
we will see you guys. I have a feeling this is not going to be.
I want to come down there.
She's duetting.
There's a man in a cowboy hat.
There's like harmony going on in
It's
there.
not bad. They practiced. There is a camera crew. I mean, not just the audience, but there's like a full-on camera crew here too. So it must have been for something.
I wonder if they wrote this. Is this the cover?
Maybe. I don't know. It's a Tonya original.